At this summit, I had a look once again at the whole process of electing the European Commission and the President of the Commission. In the European Parliament, we have now taken a decision which has brought to its conclusion a historical process. The Commission has legitimacy, a basic legitimacy, which it's never had before. And I would like to point out that the so-called Spitzenkandidaten process has given the European institutions a new constitutional capacity without any need for treaty change. The European Parliament is able to propose a candidate through a majority, and that was then assumed by the Council. And there was then an agreement with 26 heads of state and government siding with the European Parliament. And that process led to the proposal yesterday whereby the Commission, together with its President, was able to be approved by a broad majority. And that has never happened before with any previous Commission. And this is a democratic progress which we've never seen before, and we're very grateful for that. I think this new Commission can be very confident and pursue its policy with that confidence. And we had a majority of 423 votes in the Parliament for it yesterday, and so it can be assured of great support there as well. I thanked José Manuel Barroso and Herman van Rompuy. Both of these presidents are present for the last time today in those functions in the European Council. And I pointed out to the heads of state and government that cooperation with these two gentlemen was not always easy. Personally, I have to say that in 2004 and 2009 in the European Parliament, I was in the political grouping which opposed Barroso twice. We changed the Commission in 2004 and 2009. It was a very controversial process. But I think I can also say that on balance, the Commission led by José Manuel Barroso is one, and it's always difficult to look at a situation left by someone, but I think you can not be accused of not having tried everything. Many people tried to marginalize his commission in the time of crisis. That is without doubt the case. But when it comes to energy policy and with regard to the banking union, for example, the Barroso Commission did achieve many elements of progress for Europe. And I think that José Manuel Barroso is an exceptional person, and he used his qualities for this job as well. And this is something which was acknowledged by the Parliament this week on Tuesday. The same applies to Herman van Rompuy. The European Parliament was very sceptical about the institution of the President of the European Council. We didn't think it was necessary to have a permanent president there. But you, ladies and gentlemen, know the members of the European Council as well as I do. I said, well, if you will allow, I would say, I said to the heads of state and government, that you're not the easiest group in the world to lead. And Herman van Rompuy nonetheless managed to find compromise on many occasions over and over again, and I think that is something which has to be acknowledged. Now, we discussed the 300 billion programme, and we referred to the fact that a broad majority of the European Parliament want a balance between budgetary consolidation, a sustainable consolidation, and strategic investment in growth and employment. We have advocated this for many, many years. Over the past few weeks, more and more people have been saying that this is the right approach. I would have wished that to have been the case a bit earlier in the day, but better late than never. So we have fiscal discipline on the one hand, and then investment to support growth on the other side. That, I think, is the solution. We're, for example, seeing a threat to growth in Germany. For example, the growth figures are shrinking. So I think this growth package which Mr. Juncker is proposing is coming at the right time. And in December, they'll be looking at where the money should come from and where the investment should take place. But I think I can say that, in general, the proposals have received a lot of support in the Parliament. We also discussed Ebola. It's quite clear that we have to take all possible measures in order to organise humanitarian support from the European Union and to ensure that it is sustainable, that it can be maintained. And in its decisions, as I pointed out, well, for example, we have ideas which were put forward by such as Frank-Walter Steinmeier in Germany. There's humanitarian aid sent to crisis areas. We organise that as the European Union, but I think it's also important that we are able to do similar things in areas where there are epidemics. And the Parliament would certainly support that sort of idea. And then finally, the essence of this summit was that Europe needs ambition. It needs an ambitious climate policy. If we give up our ambitious goals, if we're not able to reach them or don't want to reach them, if we allow people to start doubting this whole process of energy efficiency to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, if people think that we're not really taking the use of renewable energy and the achievement of these goals seriously, then it will never be possible to have this international agreement, a binding international agreement in Paris next year. The Copenhagen 2. If we're not able to do this, then the situation with climate change will be even more dramatic. It's clear that the European Union has to play a leading role, which is why I also pointed out that the European Parliament is calling upon the Council urgently to assume its own responsibility, and not because of splits in the Council itself, to propose poor compromises or compromises on the minimum level. We need to be ambitious. The European Council is a body within the European Union which provides the way forward. It establishes guidelines, points the direction forward. And if the Council wants to do what it can, it's all a question. Apparently, it always wants to go for unanimity. But with unanimity, we're never going to achieve an ambitious policy. And if we now have an attempt to make some of what we need to be binding for climate policy, if that's to be turned into something intergovernmental, and if it's only the Council that's able to deal with that, if the Commission makes proposals, but then at the end of the day it's the Council which is the only one who's able to deal with that, that is certainly not something which the European Parliament would accept, which is why I've said to the heads of state and government that they should avoid this disastrous process of intergovernmentalism. In the case of free movement in the past, we saw this sort of thing as well, and the European Parliament will address that as it sees fit and has done in the past. Those, in essence, were the points I made.
Yes, please.
Georgi Gotov, you're active. You didn't mention PNR, and I noticed that in your speech you spoke to leaders about this issue. Does it mean that the Parliament has completely changed its position and is now ready to negotiate PNR?
Nein, Sie haben ja den Wortlaut meiner Rede gelesen.
Well, indeed, you may have read the text of my speech. I didn't actually mention it specifically in my oral presentation, but you'll find the relevant point there.
Good evening. Eine kleine Frage in English, please. We have seen the European Commission writing to 5 member states asking to have more details about the budgets for 2015. Don't you have the impression that we are discussing more on 0-point something problems rather than more general issues that could lead to growth and job creation? Wouldn't it be necessary to underline more the second part, which are the jobs and the growth, rather than 0.2, 0.3 in the discussion between the Member States and the Commission? Thank you very much.
Eine kleine Antwort.
Well, to answer in brief.
The position of the European Parliament is quite clear. I mentioned it at the beginning of my statement. A well-balanced approach between sustainable management of sovereign debts on one hand in the frame of the treaty and the rules is one side of the medal. But the pact is called the Stability and Growth Pact, and we must take into account that we should not play one thing against another. Stability, yes, but not first stability, then growth. We need both stability and growth, and therefore it's up to the Commission to use the flexibility, but you know my position and the position of the European Parliament. You will never say in a public budget without growth. And by the way, also not without to look on the revenue side of a budget. So therefore, I insist, and the European Parliament insists, that we also speak about tax harmonization, about the fight against tax evasion, about the fight against tax fraud. We must not increase taxes if we fight efficiently against tax evasion. We will increase enormously the income side of the budgets. That's, in my eyes, from the highest importance. And the money which is available should be invested. If the European Parliament fights for the so-called front-loading of 6 billion euros in the fight against unemployment of young people, and I'm informed that only 1% of the 6 billion is absorbed until today. 1% from requests from the member states or suggestions from the Commission to spend that money. I share your view. It's perhaps interesting to discuss about 0.15, but it's also interesting to discuss where are the 99% of the 6 billion.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Sergei Voropayev, National Radio of Ukraine. President, probably it's not directly related to today's discussion, but anyway, in 3 days we will have in Ukraine parliamentary elections. Do you expect some changes after these elections? Thank you.
Das hängt natürlich vom Ausgang der Wahlen ab.
Of course, it depends on the outcome of the elections.
Of the election. The country, Ukraine, got already a little bit more stability after the election of President Poroshenko. Countries in crisis need strong institutions, and The acting Rada is for sure not the Rada representing the political tendencies of the country and the will of citizens. Therefore, yes, I expect that the new Rada will build a new government. My feeling is that there is a chance for a Rada working strongly and constructively together with Poroshenko, and that could lead to more coherence and more stability in the country. That's what I hope. We send a lot of observers to guarantee that the elections are free, fair, and correct. And I hope that this election will give to the country a little bit more internal stability.
I see no. Gisela, I should have known.
Savoir, est-ce que vous... Oula, d'accord.
Okay. Could I just ask, are the heads of state and government, in your view, prepared to begin this new approach, a new way forward in view of the EU's problems, or do you think the energy and climate debate will be the first issue where you will have clashing interests between large and smaller member states, as we've seen during the crisis?
Also wenn ich Sie richtig verstanden habe.
As I understood your question, as regards the institutional issues, institutional progress, well, if I understood you correctly, let me start again so you can follow the interpretation. If I didn't say anything more than I said at the beginning of my presentation, my statement, I would say that things have gone so far that the heads of state and government have understood the points at issue. As regards possible clash of interests or balance of interests between large and smaller member states, I would say that tends to depend in the European Union on the balance of power in the European Union. The majority of member states are small and medium-sized states. Not all by any means are as large as Germany, far from it. The majority are small or medium-sized states. Of course, there are some member states which do carry a certain amount of weight in the European Union, more than others. So the best way of solving problems in the European Union is, in my view, is not trying to play off interests, one set of interests against another, but looking to achieve compromises where everyone has a stake. The community method, which Mr. Juncker mentioned yesterday, is much more effective in this respect than the purely intergovernmental method. We've seen that year after year. In the intergovernmental domain, one country can say, either you do it my way or we're leaving. Or another country says it must go our way or we're going to veto the whole thing. And that's not an EU that can actually achieve real progress. So I think in a transnational democracy, it has to be based on compromise, not on confrontation.
Yes, then I thank you and wish you a nice evening.
Okay.
Schluss.